Hello, in this video I am going to show you how to create animated sprites using a technique called SpriteSheets. Now if you are new to game development, one thing you should know is that a sprite in video games is a picture or animation that represents a character, object, or an effect, like a player, enemy, or an explosion. You could kind of think of it as a sticker that can move around on the game screen, letting players see and interact with different parts of the game. Now, this screen I have up here is a very well-known early video game called Space Invaders. And you can see there are these invaders, which are these enemies that move back and forth. And these, in a sense, are sprites. Every single enemy that is up here could be considered a sprite, as well as the shooter, which is here on the bottom. And even these kind of barricades that can help prevent missiles from hitting the shooter are also sprites, as well as the missiles. So every kind of element that we're seeing right here can be considered to be a sprite. In this example, we are going to create sprite sheets. And a sprite sheet is basically a single image file that contains multiple sprites. Inside that image file, they could be arranged as a grid or a sequence. And it's basically a sequence of all the images that might be used to make up either a single sprite or potentially many sprites that are seen within your game. So, for instance, if you go and Google sprite sheets, you will see, in some cases, some sprite sheets of familiar games. Like, for instance, this one, you could see this girl there's 4 different images to represent the girl, and then if you animate it, you could basically play through each one of these images, and it will appear that the girl is moving or walking. You can see there's many different ones similar. Likewise, when we play the Space Invaders, you can see that the invaders actually are animating through different views of themselves. There goes a new sprite. So this technique is very common in games, and we are going to do the same thing in our game. So to start, I am going to use an app. It's a web-based app called Piskel. And what this app does is it lets you build your own sprite sheet. So the way you start that is you go ahead and you say create sprite, and it basically brings up an editor that you can use to edit your own sprites or your own characters. And what I like to do is I first start off and I create a palette. You can see a current palette has already been defined, and this is the last one that I did. And if I hit this edit, it'll show you an edit screen where you can kind of define the colors that are going to be used for the sprite. I recommend that you do this right at the beginning. And in this particular case, I went to Coolers and grabbed a palette that I liked. You can do that by going to the tools and then palette generator. And then it gave me these 5 hex values that I then went and inputted into this edit palette screen. You can see if I click on this one, it's black. If I click on this one, it's this 22.7C9D, which is what I got from here. The next one was 17C3B2. If I click on that, you'll see 17C3B2. So I kind of created my own palette that I could then use as I am making my sprites. And then I can go ahead and start with the first one. So I'm going to go and click this. And it works similar to maybe Adobe, a very basic version of Adobe Illustrator or even Microsoft Paint, if you're familiar with that. And you can pick tools on the left. There's an erase tool, a fill tool, a rectangle tool, rectangle selection. We're gonna make use of a couple of these. So first, I'm gonna create a rectangle. I also like to pick. You can pick how wide the lines are that you draw. So the stroke of this rectangle, I'm gonna pick the second one. It turns out that when your lines are really skinny, like if you have 1 pixel length, if some of the detail of your sprite is only 1 pixel, it's going to be hard to see. So I like to do like 2 pixels in my lines. It makes it easier to see. So I'm going to go ahead and select the rectangle tool. And oops, I didn't like that. I'm going to draw. It is not. Well, that'll be okay. There's a little bit of a grid in the drawing tool. All right, so I am first going to create a rectangle. and I am going to go ahead and fill it with, let's say, this color right here. You can see when I click on the color in the palette, it shows my primary color right here. I can click the bucket and I can fill it. Then let me add some legs to, oops. Command Z will undo. In that case, you know, I made an error. I want to use black. I'm going to kind of create one leg there, and then create one more leg there. I'm going to fill them also. I'm actually going to right, so you can see it's a little bit of a character. Let me go ahead and make eyes. Oh, I didn't want that. I wanted the rectangle tool. Actually, why don't I'm going to just show you how to copy. I'm going to first go ahead and let me just fill the inside. And then I'm going to select it. And then when you mouse over, you can see there's some commands, and Command C will copy it. So I'm going to just go ahead and hit Command C, and then I can kind of move, and then Command V will paste it. So now I have my eyes. And I like that. I'm going to leave that as my first frame of this sprite. And then you can add a new frame, or in this case, I'm just going to duplicate this frame and make some gentle changes to it. So let me duplicate it, and now I'm going to move the eye over. Whoops, that is moving everything. Instead, I'm going to just kind of select. I'm going to Command copy it, and then kind of move over a little bit, and Command paste it. And then I'm going to do it one more time right here, and you can see it's a little messy. I'm going to clean it in a second. And now I'm going to go back and just kind of edit a little. But the effect is, oops, that was too much. Command Z. Nope. Nope, sorry. There, so this effect, you know, the first one, the eyes are a little to the right. The second one, the eyes are a little bit to the left. I'm also going to add in the feet. I'm going to change kind of the style of the feet a little bit. Let's do that. Let me just make it all kind of black first. It could be a little weird in getting used to it. All right, and then I'm going to just fill in the feet a little bit with the blue. Just like that. All right, so next I am going to copy it again. And this time there are some transforms that we can do on the entire thing. So I'm just going to flip the whole image. So now you can see I got, I have three different images, three different slightly different images. Let me do one more. And let me just kind of touch it up a little to make it a little bit different than the others. Just going to get rid of the feet. And let's get the black. What happened there? For some reason, oh, I got the erase tool. Let me get the drawing tool back. All right. So those are our 4 images, and this is going to be our sprite sheet. So once you're done creating it, so I have 4 images here, I can save it. And now when you do a save, it actually lets you save it offline. So I'm going to call this file the Invader sprite. And when I say save as Piscal, it's going to download a file that I can use. I could come back and use again later to edit it. So it doesn't save it on the cloud. It just lets me download it. You can see right here, it's actually running through the animation. So you can see it looks kind of interesting. But this is not downloading something that is usable. We have to download it as a sprite sheet. And the way we do that is we choose export right here. And it asks us how we want the sprite sheet to be laid out. Now we have 4 images, and for the sake of, just how we're going to work with it in P5, I'm going to have one file just for the Invader. It is possible for you to have multiple sprites in one sprite sheet, but in this case, we're just going to have the one Invader and the 4 different images of each one. And I'm going to say, let's create 4 columns and only 1 row. So this is going to save the 4 images into one image, each one next to each other. And each sprite is going to have a resolution of 32 by 32 pixels. All right, so when I'm ready, I just hit download, and that is going to save the file. You can see it called it invadersprite.png. All right, so then once you do that, you can open up the P5 editor. And in the P5 editor, we have to make sure that we add the P5 play into the index.file, index.html. So I'm going to do that first. And to add the P5 play library, you need these 2 lines. You can get this from my notes. So I'm adding that. And I'm going to just make sure it runs without an error, which it does. It's not doing anything yet. And then we want to upload that PNG file that we just created. So I'm going to just hit plus upload file. I'm going to go to my file manager. Let's see. It throws it in my download files. And just going to do that. And you can see there's the 4 files that we just created. And it actually puts it all into one file called Invader Sprite. Okay? And then once you have that, you can then preload this animation. And the way we do that is we first create a variable that is going to hold it. So I'm going to just say, I'm going to create a variable called Invader. And then I'm going to create a preload function. Now preload is a function that can be used to load up images before your P5 sketch runs. So here I am going to say load Annie. And it is called Invader Sprite.png. Now it is also important that we say, when we're loading an animation, we have to say what size, what's inside that file, because P5 and P5 Play isn't smart enough to kind of open the file and figure out that there's 4 images inside of it in this case. So we have to go ahead and say frame size is 32 by 32. So that's the dimensions of our sprite that's inside this file. And we also have to tell it that there are 4 of them. Okay. And then when we draw, all we have to do is say animation Invader, and let's put it at 50-50 in P5 Play. All right, so I'm going to run it, and there it is. You can see our animation is running. Now we can also set a frame delay. Right now it's moving pretty fast, but if we say frame delay 30, you're going to see it's going to move a little bit slower, which might be more to our liking. Okay, so this isn't an animation, but I have to say, in P5 Play, we did not actually create a sprite. We're just creating an animation that can run in the background. This, like for instance, will not have collision capabilities. It will not work with the P5 Play gravity. It is just an animation that's up on the screen. So what I am going to do is I'm going to change this so that instead of just creating an animation, we're going to create a sprite that is going to have animation capabilities. And the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to say, I'm going to first duplicate what we just did, because inside there is going to have the P5 Play library, and we have our image still there, the 4. But the difference of what we have to do to make this work as a sprite is I'm going to just name it Invader 1. And then inside the preload, instead of loading the animation, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a sprite. Let's say create a sprite. We're going to put the sprite at 50-50, and its width is going to be 32, and its height is going to be 32. You know, that's the dimensions of what that sprite sheet has. And then what we do is we say Invader 1 is going to use the sprite sheet Invader blue.png. No, sorry, not Invader blue. Invader sprite. Right, so it's going to use Invader sprite.png, and then we have to add an animation to the sprite. And the way we do that is say add Annie, and we can specify the parameters like the frame delay. We had a frame delay before of 30. Let's keep that. And we can say frames 4. So that will add an animation to the sprite. And then we no longer need this. All right, so let's, and we also don't need this either. And instead of background, we can also use the clear command, which is preferred in P5 Play. So I believe this is going to work. This is the only thing we have to do, and it is going to load the sprite and then start running the sprite automatically. And there it is. We can see our sprite. Now, if we add like gravity, we can see that the sprite is going to interact with it. You can see that there it goes. And then maybe we want to add a floor. Say let's make the floor. It's going to start at the center. We're going to have a height of it's going to start at the bottom of our screen, so that's height minus 20. Let's make it 400. Let's make it the width of our canvas is how wide the floor will be, and it'll be 20 high. So that creates the floor, and then to keep the floor, let's run it, see if this works. In the setup, we got to say create floor. Let's run it. We should see a floor, but you can see the floor is now dropping. To prevent that from happening, we just say floor.collider equals static, and that'll prevent the floor from dropping. And there we go. There's our sprite. Now, if we want 2 of these sprites, we can just create 2 variables for the Invader. And let's duplicate all of this. Let's put the second one over 150. And let's just use all the same parameters. So now we should have 2. And you can see they're both animated. And they're both moving. So that is the summary of how to create animated sprites. Just in summary, we first created the sprite sheet, which is the 4 images, which we did in the Piskel editor. We uploaded that image, and then we created variables for the sprites, and created the sprites and said the sprite sheet was equal to that image file that we uploaded, and then we went ahead and run it, and here we go. I hope this was helpful. Thanks.